Greetings and salutations, this is Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
And today we're showing you the last addition so far to our Second World War Chinese Nationalist Army. These two are a couple of trucks used by the Chinese. I wasn't originally going to have any trucks in my Chinese army, but I thought they might come in handy given that the troops we're using were part of a mechanised brigade. There were trucks knocking around. The trucks I chose were the Opel built by General Motors under licence, and they were used by the Chinese. The Opel's quite an interesting story. Opel is a German manufacturing company that makes trucks and stuff, and they're a subsidiary of General Motors. And during the Second World War, whenever the American bombers dropped bombs on a Opel factory and various other factories, the American government had to pay reparations to General Motors, which is because they were bombing their property technically, which is an interesting little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought that was an interesting point. But these trucks were used by the Chinese. There weren't many of them. Not huge. About 400, I think, were sold to the Chinese. The Chinese tended to use anything they could get their hands on. They used a lot of Japanese trucks, but I didn't want to confuse the Japanese trucks with the Chinese, so I decided to do some German trucks because we already have German armoured cars and armoured car in the army, and I thought it would just be an interesting little thing to make the army look quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think so? I thought it was a good idea. They're painted up in the standard grey German, which is how everything arrived during the 1930s. They came out of the factory this colour. 42, I believe, the end of 42, everything came out of the factory painted yellow as a base colour in Germany. That's why you have tanks with a yellow undercoat and then and then brown and green splashed on top of it for camouflage. It's because yellow was the colour it came out of the factory. Up to 42, they came out of the factory grey. I don't know why it changed. I would assume they ran out of grey paint. I'm not sure how you made grey paint, but Germany didn't have much in the way of resources to get paint from, so I would assume that it was cheaper to make yellow paint. I don't know. It is something I should really look up because it sounds interesting in my head.
I believe black and white makes grey.
Black and white makes grey. Maybe they ran out of black.
Or white.
Yeah, each vehicle used to come with 2 spare tins of paint and different colours, usually green and brown, rust red brown. And they would all be different shades because they'd all been made by different manufacturers. And tank crews would swap tins of paint with each other to make different colours on their tanks, which was quite fun. In the First World War, they actually used pink as a base colour for all their artillery and everything. Then some of the artillery in the First World War actually remained pink. Do you know why?
No.
They don't show up on aerial photos.
Why?
Because they come out black and white back then, and the pink didn't show up as well on aerial photos. So artillery, which tended to be really far behind the lines in World War One, the only way the enemy could ever see it was by taking a picture from the air.
Oh.
So they painted them pink, which is an interesting thing. But if anyone ever orders things off us and we paint them pink, they will complain because they've seen a war film and they'll say no, they were grey or blue or pink or well, not pink, whatever. But
grey.
Yeah, in actual fact they weren't. Field guns had a splinter pattern on them for the First World War. But we're not talking First World War anyway, we're talking Second World War.
Yeah.
And these are the Chinese tanks for our Chinese army. And our Chinese army is pretty much finished now. I think we've more or less capped off everything we wanted to do with it.
Japanese army?
Yeah, well, I think we finished Chinese army. I was thinking of adding a couple of things, but I'm not really sure. I think we'll just keep it as it is for now. So I will do an overall video of the whole Chinese army together later on, and you can have a look at that and see what you think. You may notice the newspapers on the floor. I've got some Chinese newspapers from the... No, it's out of focus. Using the wrong camera again. basically I've printed off some Chinese newspapers in really small scale, and I've put them on the basis to make them look like just papers blowing down the street, emergency, invasion sort of thing. Japan invades China, and so the newspapers on the street. So the next project will probably be Japanese. But do you have any questions?
How did you get this on?
How do you mean?
How did you get the cover over?
It's actually made out of wood, and literally it is made out of balsa. The entire truck's made out of balsa. So I just put some milliput over the top. I just squished it into a long flat bit, and I just put it over the top and just squashed it down, and that's how I got it. So it's not overly complex. Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that everything?
No.
No? Oh, go on then.
Last one.
Last one.
What's this writing? Just there.
Wu. It's Chinese. Wu means it was the writing for military. It meant it was a military vehicle.
I would say military
Wu.
vehicle.
I
would say military vehicle.
Well, basically that's what it means. It means it belongs to the Wu, the army.
Woo.
It's army. The vehicle is army property.
Look out!
Basically.
Look, woo! I'm coming.
Yeah. So basically, at the end of the 1937 was the end of the warlord period. Chiang Kai-shek had pretty much become the most powerful warlord himself and become sort of king of China, sort of. President-elect of China. One man, one vote, and he was the man. He had the vote. And he was in charge of China, and he used his Gestapo and police to maintain order. And the other warlords basically had to pay homage to him. And so he had to form the Chinese military into one solid army. China hadn't actually had an actual field army for a considerable amount of time, since about 1911. So it had gone for a good, 25 years? No, 30 years. No, 1937, 20-something years of not actually having a field army. Instead, each warlord had his own private army. And when all the warlord stuff was put together, they found out they had a considerable amount of tanks and stuff, because each warlord had bought their own private tanks to play with, to show off. And so they formed them into, I think, 2 or 3 tank battalions, and created the first tank corps of the Chinese army.
Okay.
They then went up against the Japanese, who had already learned how to fight with tanks against the Russians. So, yeah. Actually, no, I'm thinking about it. It would have been the Battle of Nanking would have been prior to the Russo-Japanese war, where they used tanks. So, the Japanese would actually have learned to use tanks against the Chinese.
Cool. I thought it was the way around.
Yeah, I did for a second there, but thinking about it, it would actually be the other way around. Yeah, that's quite interesting. So this is
for me.
Yes, that's it for you. This is the end of this project, more or less. I can't really think of anything else I desperately want for the army. I've just this is the army I've got so far, and I think pretty much this is a Chinese army project finished now. So it's been a long haul, though, hasn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. The rebasing of the figures, the repainting, the sourcing of the vehicles, the making of vehicles was quite complex, but it's been a really interesting project to do, and I now have a full bolt action army to play with, which is quite interesting. And I will do a video next showing the entire army in its full deployment, give you an idea of what it looks like. So thank you very much for watching, and I put you over to my trusty sidekick.
So if you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe, and comment down below any questions that you think I could have asked on this, and we'll answer them in a bolt action Q&A. That's everything from me.
And that's everything from him. Good day.